Welcome to Truth Be Found. I'm professional investigator Justin Yentis. Here we cut through the noise, dig deep, and uncover what others overlook. If you're ready to roll up your sleeves and get to the bottom of the story, you've come to the right place. Let's get to work. Welcome back to Truth Be Found. Today we're going to be talking about what happens when a sorority girl with pink legal pads joins a team of seasoned investigators who work alongside criminal defendants facing execution, some international terrorists, and drug trafficking organizations. Now, this might sound like the start of a movie or a comedy even, but it's actually the real story of our own Gen Z investigator, Madeline Schmidtke. So Madeline came to AIA as an intern from the Cronkite School at ASU and ended up becoming one of the most uniquely qualified investigators to join our team. And today we're going to be diving into her journey and learn why investigators like her are essential to this industry. So Madeline, I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
Madeline, let's go back to the beginning because this didn't start, your career in investigations didn't start in the back of a surveillance van or behind a desk full of case files. You were a journalism student walking into, an office full of criminal investigators. Could you tell us, how did you end up here? And tell me what your first day was like coming into this type of industry.
I was a senior at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism, and I was a sports journalism major. I was looking for some sort of internship, primarily in either news or sports. And as I was going through interviews and trying to find what was best for me, nothing was really speaking to me or sparking interest. Then I came across the AIA internship post. And from the first sentence, it said, if you love true crime and you can't stop watching it. And I immediately was like, yes. I've always been the type of person who needed to know more. If I was watching a true crime documentary, I would stop every 5 minutes. When I didn't understand something, I would Google it. I was just always curious. And I didn't even know that was a job that I could do because I had never seen that. I had never been given that experience. So I immediately emailed you and then applied.
Mm-hmm.
That led to my interview and me getting the internship. And then my first day, I remember I was super excited.
Mm-hmm.
I was obviously nervous, but immediately,
Yes, you were.
yeah. Immediately when I came into the office, I never had the feeling of I had to prove myself or I had to be different, from the jump.
Mm-hmm.
I always knew that I was valued and appreciated, and me being young and underestimated, that was an asset here because I knew things that you guys didn't exactly know because I'm younger. I'm in a different generation. I had to grow up with technology. Your friends had Snapchat. When people were getting Snapchat, that was the way to communicate. Everyone got Snapchat then, You're not communicating with your friends through Snapchat.
No,
and when you, there was no reason to get that. For us, our generation, when there was something new, everyone was jumping on that. So I brought that skill of a new digital side that I don't think you guys were as comfortable or familiar with.
Right. Oh, it's completely true. And, it's one thing that we always talk about in our cases with our attorneys and whatnot. When we're looking at a case, we want to find someone or make sure that all of our deficiencies are covered. So if we've got a case that involves, there's been recent cases in the East Valley involving Snapchat communications and kids that were sharing different information on there and organizing into some criminal activity on there. And the way that they were maneuvering was somewhat foreign to us that have never used it in that manner. And so bringing, you on, you were able to look at and understand and bring a level of competency to an investigation that we wouldn't have otherwise had. So I'll say that was extremely valuable. What is it like to work with people that are quite a bit older than you? I mean, do you feel like you teach us as much as we teach you? I feel like that's the case.
Yeah, and I also think it's kind of like a gift because I learn things every day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think the biggest thing that I've learned from you guys is to trust my instinct because this job, this field, it's literally like an 1,000-piece puzzle, and you have to find where the middle pieces go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to trust your instinct or else you're never going to get anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You have to just put that piece down, and either it's right and you're good, or you'll find out further along, like, hey, I need to go back and fix that and rearrange things. And I think that from you guys, like having so much experience, not just because you're older, it's more like
Mm-hmm.
the years of experience, I've been able to learn a lot, and I've been able to learn to trust myself.
I like it. I like it. And that's an example that I've used as well. You know, that investigations is like putting together a puzzle when all you've got is a bunch of pieces. You don't know if you have them all. You probably don't, and you don't know what the end picture looks like. So, you know, you start piecing together what you can understand, and that leads you to new areas. So one of the biggest assets that you brought to the table and that kind of set you apart from the rest of our team is your fluency in digital spaces. And that's something that a lot of people overlook, especially older attorneys and investigators and cops even. Um, your specialty in social media and chat rooms and encrypted messaging, can you tell us a little bit about how you gained that? I mean, it was obviously by growing up in that space, but also you've done some training in addition to that.
Well, yeah, to start, I think being able to understand the Gen Z language online is not just helpful, it's pretty much essential because that's how everyone's communicating now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just reading something, it's being able to like dive into it, being able to differentiate between, oh, this is just a normal conversation and oh, this is a red flag. Like this sparks something with a warning sign.
Can you give me an example of what you would see as a red flag in like Gen Z communication that someone from Gen X or a baby boomer might not notice?
The use of emojis.
How so?
Emojis have so much power.
What do you mean?
Just the way that they're set up, like, I mean, there's certain emojis that probably don't mean great things. And if you do a quick Google search, that could probably take you back
Mm-hmm.
to a certain organization or they're referencing something in specific. But I think it's honestly just an instinct thing. Like, again, I grew up in that. Like, I know when something's a little fishy,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And then for my training, I did the social media certification, and I was doing about 40 hours on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was pretty intensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I had to take multiple tests along with it. And then I had a final exam. And pretty much what I learned throughout that was all of the privacy laws. So, what data I can get from certain social media sites, what I can't get, what I need in order to get that, what forms need to be filled out, who I need to contact, yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also learned not just how to find an account through sock puppet accounts or burner accounts, but how to recognize behavior. So there's different models of recognizing behavior on social media,
Mm-hmm.
how one person's connected to another, how they're connected to a bigger group, just like the dynamic of people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just looking at an account, it's not just looking through followers and following, it's like diving into it.
Mm-hmm.
And that can take some time, but that's how you're going to find more than just the surface level.
Right. The information that we really need that's going to, lead us in a new direction.
And I also found how there are so many gaps that are missed in investigations because people aren't thoroughly going through social media accounts. People aren't piecing together everything.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much that is probably answered online, especially now. And I think that people should use that to their advantage. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there are so many resources out there that people are using that you could find the truth in, and you should take advantage of that because it's there.
And I've noticed that it was something I learned in recent years is the multiple types of accounts that kids will have. And there's probably terms for these, but let's use Instagram for example. I've noticed that it's pretty common for, a kid to have some sort of Instagram account that maybe their parents are on and their grandparents are on, or, their aunts and uncles. And then there's others that might not be as widely accepted by their families, that might be a little bit more hidden. And I've seen, I saw one that it was a girl that had multiple accounts, and on one of them in the bio line it said, like, "Mom, don't join."
Yeah.
Can you explain that to we might have other investigators that think if they find one account that's likely the only account that some person is using? How is it that kids are setting up multiple tiers of accounts, and why do they do that?
Well, they're probably using multiple emails to set up these accounts, and they're doing it because they don't want someone to see what they're posting or what they're doing on that account, obviously. And I think that also going off of that, one of the most important things, like in order to find other accounts, is looking at the URL
Mm-hmm.
and the username that's in there. Because most of the times, if they have multiple accounts, their name isn't going to be in the URL of all of them. And the URL, like on Facebook, for example, that's where the username is.
Mm-hmm.
So like their name could be Madeline Schmidtke, but in their URL, it could be maddog.341. You would never be able to find that. So I would take that URL username and then put it into every single social media
Mm-hmm.
site to find that.
That makes sense. So if you're Mad Dog, whatever it was, 315 on Instagram, you might be Mad Dog 315 on Snapchat or any of the other platforms.
Yeah, and most likely if you have a fake account on one platform or multiple accounts on one platform, you're going to have multiple accounts on another. It's a pattern, behavior.
Okay. I like it. So let's talk about, you and I had a meeting the other day we obviously can't go into the details of the specific person, but we were looking at a young girl that was in her upper teens, and her mother was concerned with her friend group. And I had looked at this case and assumed that these other people were maybe involved in prostitution or sex trafficking, because all of the signs were there to align with other sex trafficking cases that we'd had, other prostitution cases that we had. And you brought in some new information that I'd never been exposed to, which is these OnlyFans managers and the networks that they build. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, and how an OnlyFans manager and what it is that they're trying to create?
Well, they're making a profit off of every single person that is posting videos. So if they're managing someone, they're making that profit. So these managers are going to go for the most vulnerable people they can find. And once they find one of them, they're going to have their friends get involved, and it's just a cycle. So I think they're just looking for vulnerable people in areas where they know that's popular.
Mm-hmm.
That's a thing.
Okay.
Because there are certain areas where that's a lot more prominent than not. Also, that's something with the newer generations where it's very, very big.
Now, so this is like a digital pimp.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, when you say it's very popular, what do you mean? Are there a very high number of young people that are being taken in by these digital pimps to create OnlyFans accounts and, kick money up to them?
Yeah, I mean, they're making a ton of money. They're young girls. Like, they probably don't want to work, or that's like the easiest out for them. It's like you're being given a ton amount of money to do something that they don't think is a big deal. And the manager's probably selling it to them very heavily,
Mm-hmm.
taking them to dinners or showing them what they could have
Mm-hmm.
if they chose that life.
Okay.
And then again, they're targeting vulnerable people who they know like are in a position where they don't need it, but they're more inclined to say yes.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds very similar to what, and I know you haven't had experience in these yet. I mean, at least not with us, working on like a sex trafficking case. We have there's a federal charge, sex trafficking through force, fraud, or coercion, and it involves, bringing someone across state lines to work as either a prostitute or some sort of sex worker, through deception or violence. And but what you're describing is very similar to the activities that these real life, your traditional sense pimps are using on girls. They often think that they're in some sort of relationship with their pimp or with their OnlyFans manager. They often think that it's in their best interest, that they're making a good career choice, a life choice that's going to lead them to a better life. And what do you think that they find, or what do you feel that they find instead of that?
Instead of what?
Instead of that picturesque experience of a good career move.
Well, it can lead to really bad things. Someone can take advantage of you. Someone can do bad things to you. You're putting yourself in a very bad situation. And at first it can look like what you were saying, picturesque and perfect and exactly what you want. But people don't realize that you're putting yourself in a bad situation until they're in that bad situation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to be aware and be open and know what you're getting yourself into.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like the OnlyFans stuff, that kind of goes along with how people need to be aware of all the digital media and social media, everything that's out there now, because most people wouldn't know about that. Most people wouldn't think it's a big thing or available to everyone, but it is. And there are a lot of people who take that route and then ends up in bad situations.
Right. And I'll say that was the first time that I had heard about the phrase OnlyFans manager. And, we'd worked around cases involving sex trafficking, prostitution, and all of these traditional crimes. But this is a new area that is opening up to criminal actors, to investigators that, generally are retired law enforcement or people that have come from other fields that have retired into this arena. We're somewhat of an exception to that. But it is difficult for those who have never experienced these type of digital crimes to understand those. So how is it that you feel we as more seasoned investigators can have our eyes open to what the digital crimes are really capable of?
I think you need someone that's younger, not younger, but just like younger.
Right.
You need someone who grew like me, who grew up in that generation, who knows it. Because honestly, like you would get yourself in a big web and big spiral and a bunny hole if you went off like trying to find everything that's accessible now. Because there are a lot of things that are accessible, but based on the demographic of the subject, all of that, that's going to determine what they're using, what they're going on. And I think just having someone who grew up in this time and is like so aware of things happening online is really essential, because you're not going to be able to go anywhere. You're not going to be able to grow if you don't have someone who grew up in an era where it's constantly growing, it's constantly changing. So I think people need to hire younger people and then have them make scribe pages or documents from someone who's younger and gets it. Because the way you're going to learn is by having someone who's living that right now.
Right. And I've always felt that in investigations, whenever an investigator comes to the point where they feel, I know everything, then that's probably the time when you should retire, because you're never going to be in a position where you have all of the information. And there's new technologies coming up every day. There's new communication platforms. I've got, attorneys that'll sometimes say, well, there's no history of communication on this guy's Verizon bill, so they weren't talking. I said, well, there's 6 other apps on his phone, all of them encrypted. Some of them haven't even been checked, and some of these have disappearing messages. And so there's so many more areas where 2 people can communicate that might not be documented outside of an SMS text message. And getting folks to see what all of those options are has been somewhat of a struggle. So yeah, I think bringing on, I've always liked to have a lot of different abilities and backgrounds that can identify things that I might not see. So, from the outside, you might, don't necessarily fit the stereotype of an investigator. And that's, I think, what makes you somewhat more powerful in the field. And you and April, April's been your mentor so far, and which has been fantastic. You've got kind of this more approachable, non-threatening vibe that helps to break down barriers. And I know you two have gone into interviews, and you and Jamie have gone into interviews. Have you ever felt like you had someone like underestimate you, and you were able to use that to your advantage?
Well, first of all, April has been a great mentor,
Mm-hmm.
the best. I've learned so much from her, and I think that we've been able to work together really well and kind of like bounce things off each other and get to new like leads and destinations that we wouldn't have found maybe just
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. And then I can't think of a specific incident because there's been so many. Like I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I'm always underestimated. I've always kind of been like that.
Uh-huh.
And I think it used to kind of frustrate me. But then I realized, especially here in this job, that me being underestimated is my superpower because people don't think I would do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And that allows people to be more vulnerable and open and allows me to listen and pick up things that maybe other people couldn't pick up.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I have pink legal pads. And yeah, I'm me, I'm young, but that just means I show up differently. And I think that that's what makes me really good at what I do, being
Mm-hmm.
underestimated.
Oh, it totally does. It totally does. I know when you applied, I had a little nickname for, I go through these, the applications of the new interns, and sometimes when we're looking for a new support investigator, a new lead, some will stand out, some won't. But yours did stand out because you had mentioned some sorority activities. So
Sorority activities.
yes, well, or being a part of one.
Yeah.
And so I think I nicknamed you Tridelt after that old SNL
Yeah,
skit.
I'm tried out.
So
I still don't know the SNL skit, but
oh,
yeah,
it's fantastic with Adam Sandler and whatnot.
I really don't want to watch it.
But you coming in, and so when April and I interviewed you, and I talked to her about it beforehand, I said, I this girl is very much a new face to the staff that we have, but I think you definitely fill a big gap that we were experiencing with the new cases that we're getting on. That they come with such a heavy amount of digital information, and the cell phone use, the tablet use, social media investigations. It was just something that we didn't have the full capability to investigate on the levels that I wanted to. And so bringing you on really brought a whole new set of abilities to our agency that we just didn't have before. So that's not really a question.
You're welcome.
Oh.
I'm just kidding.
So, pink legal pads aside, I think it was extremely beneficial for, our agency and our clients to have access to now an investigator that can decipher some of the things that we couldn't previously decipher. So I found that I have to go to Urban Dictionary a lot less. And, I can just, yell out, asking you what something means. And that's very helpful. So could you tell me kind of what it is that you've picked up from the more seasoned folks around the office that maybe has surprised you? And what is something that you feel like you've been able to teach us?
I think that the biggest thing that I have picked up that's of value is how much everyone loves their job.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this is a field that if you're going to be in, you need to love your job. You need to want the truth. You need to want to be curious. You need to ask questions. You need to want to learn. Like you're never done.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's ever closed. So I think just loving your job and staying true to who you are
Mm-hmm.
is something that I've really learned, and like how devoted everyone gets about their cases that they're on. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can tell everyone wants the answers. No one's just doing it to get the job done. Everyone's doing it to find the truth, which is what this field is. It's uncovering the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think that the biggest thing I have taught you guys is definitely my terminology and also my social media skills
Uh-huh.
and pink legal pads.
And pink legal pads, all three of those. There's been so many times we have our weekly lead investigators meetings for all of our investigators that are the case managers of each case. And there's been so many times in those meetings where we've identified some issue and said, well, we need Madeline on this because there's no one else that understands why they're communicating like this, but I think she'll be able to shed so much light on it that we don't understand. And so having your perspective around has just been super, super valuable to our entire team.
I also think that's how everyone at the agency is also. Everyone's different, so different that it's a different perspective with every person. And that's necessary because there's so many different angles you can look at things. And if everyone's looking at it through the same lens, you only need one person on it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have everyone looking at something through a different lens, you have so many different outcomes or ways to go
Mm-hmm.
where you can find the truth.
Right. And that's really ultimately what we're tasked to do, is to find out the truth of a situation, not necessarily to spin it one way or another, but just to present all the facts and uncover them all. So, you've come a long way from your first day in the office, which was, gosh, how long ago was that? Was that the beginning of 2025 or the late 2024? Yeah. And you've earned your place on this team, obviously, in so many ways. We're really proud of the progress that you've made and the new certifications and the new abilities that you've developed and trained us on. So looking forward, what do you feel like is next for you?
Well, I definitely found my field and my area of study and passion in this job and everything that I've learned. And I constantly am excited to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
So I think definitely this area in this study and investigations, that's where I want to be because I like uncovering the truth and everyone deserves the truth.
They do.
And there are so many things out there where people don't get the truth, like news outlets or media. And also, I just like knowing the truth for myself.
Right.
But people deserve the truth, and I want to be the person to give the truth. And I've loved my time. This sounds like a closing, like I'm leaving.
Well,
but
no, I'll take it.
No, but
Layer it
I
on.
am very grateful for this opportunity that I've been given because I never had anything in investigation before I came here.
Mm-hmm.
But I had all the skills that I needed. I was used to interviewing people. I was writing with journalism and I had an interest. I think that's the most important thing, like having an interest in what you're doing.
And that's what we noticed, April and I, as we looked through the interns that we'd had and some of the prior support investigators that we had, and noticed that the skills that they needed to bring to the table were heavy. They had to be very personable because you have to go out and interact with the public. They have to be able to understand how to get information. So journalism majors, investigative journalists, they always are digging for something, and they're also always presenting it in an understandable way. They have to understand the Freedom of Information Act. They have to understand the public records law, and all of these skills that make you a good journalist or a good investigative reporter can make you a fantastic private investigator. So that's why we started partnering with some journalism schools and looking for hidden talents in those schools, because they're just that's where everyone's going to go that wants to get into any type of serious professional investigating. Obviously outside of the police department. So one question that I always get asked, and I would assume either you have already or will be asked this, is how do I get into this? Because I get, people will email me and they'll message me on social media, say, hey, I want to be an investigator. What can I do? What would you say is the best advice you could give some young person that wants to be in your position and wants to prepare themselves for a career in high stakes investigations?
You just got to go for it. Like, if you have an interest, if you're curious, if you have instinct, if you don't try, the answer is always going to be no.
Mm-hmm.
So email someone. If there's like a company you're interested in, send them your resume, say why you're interested, at least try and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was a sports journalism major, so it had nothing to do with investigations, but I knew I had the qualities that it took to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tried.
Mm-hmm.
And look at me now.
Right. Look at you now. And your references definitely checked out. Because I know April followed up and spoke to a lot of former people that had employed you or that worked with you, and they had nothing but great things to say about you. So I want to thank you, number one, for joining our team. And you've been a great asset to the agency. And our clients are very thrilled with all of the work that you're doing. And I'm excited for the next few years to see how our agency continues to develop and we bring on additional folks that can work alongside you. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
That's it for this episode of Truth Be Found. Madeline's story is a reminder that the world of investigation is evolving along with the technology, and that the younger generation of investigators is developing a new way to use this technology as it changes. It's all about adapting to the way that people really live, communicate, and ultimately hide in plain sight. So from her pink legal pads to encrypted chats, Madeline has proven that you don't need to fit the mold to solve cases and to help people. As long as you have courage, curiosity, and the willingness to learn, you'll do well in this job. So if you're listening to this conversation and it sparked interest in you, whether you're a student, a stay-at-home mom, or someone starting over, this work has a lot of room for diverse experiences. Maybe it's the right place for you. So thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe and let us know what you think on social media. You can direct message us at Truth Be Found Podcast. And until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and look for the truth. Thank you for tuning in to Truth Be Found. The hunt for answers never stops, and neither do we. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us online to stay in the loop. Remember, truth has a way of coming to light. Until next time, keep your head up and your eyes sharp.